DeBarra Spoken Word Night of 2022. I hope you guys had a good Christmas and a good New Year, and that you're all in fine fettle tonight. Tonight, as usual, is going to be a wonderful night. We'll have an open mic later on, but we're going to start the evening with a very special guest from Waterford. You don't know this as yet, Derek, but we're starting a thing here in DeBarra's tonight where we're going to endeavour and achieve having a guest from all 32 counties on the island of Ireland. Now, obviously, we've had a few guests from around the country before, but this is actually the official launch of a new endeavour, and you are the first. So the first county of Ireland to be represented on our 32 counties on the island of Ireland venture is Waterford.
I'm honoured. I'm honoured by that.
There you go. So our guest is from Waterford, obviously, and his name is Derek Flynn. He is hugely active in the arts in Waterford. He's a musician and a writer. He is the head of a thing called, I'll get the pronunciation wrong, Tra Tales, which I've been fortunate enough to attend and is a wonderful night. He spent quite a bit of time working as a musician in New York and may possibly still be there only for a certain catastrophic event that occurred on September the 11th in 2001. But it's our fortune that he ended up back in Ireland following that. He has self-published 6 novels to date, and as I said, is highly active in the Waterford scene. If I started talking about all the things he's involved in, it's theatre, writing, music, I could be here for the night. But we are absolutely delighted to have him, and we're especially delighted because he's going to give us a workshop on self-publishing, which he knows a little bit about, having done it 6 times. So please, let's have a very warm DeBarra's welcome for Derek Flynn.
Thank you so much, Stan, and thank you, everybody, and Mosey. It's lovely to be here tonight, and that's just fantastic that I'm the first of the 32 counties to be represented. That is brilliant. So I'm going to do a workshop, a short workshop on self-publishing, and then I'm going to read a little bit from my latest self-published novel, and we're also going to have a bit of a Q&A. So any questions that you have about any of the things that I touch on here throughout the night or throughout the next, whatever it is, 40, 45 minutes, you can shout it out and I'll do my best to answer it if I can at all. So I'm just going to get stuck straight into it. Just briefly to start out with, just to talk about the differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing. Traditional, and I suppose the brief history of self-publishing. Traditional publishing was always the go-to, it was the only game in town, I suppose, for a long time, until about 10 years ago when self-publishing really took off. In the 1990s and early 2000s, self-publishing would have been known as print on demand or vanity publishing, and vanity publishing was kind of a pejorative, so it was something that was kind of looked down upon. And the reason was, I suppose, that traditional publishing looked upon print on demand as basically something that people with a bit of money just did, you know, if they wanted to see their name on a book and give that book as a present to their family and friends or whatever. At the time, there was no Amazon as such. Amazon had only started out. There was no self-publishing with Amazon or anything like that. So there was no outlet if you self-published. So really the only option for if you were doing a print-on-demand book was just to sell it out of your car, basically, you know, or something like that. So there really wasn't much of a market there for it. So that all changed in the late 2000s to around 2007, 2008, 2009, around that time when Amazon started allowing authors to self-publish their own books. Now I'm going to look at Amazon's self-publishing platform because that's the one that I've always used. There are other ones, and I'll talk briefly about those in a few minutes. But we're going to have a little look at the Kindle, the KDP as it's called, Kindle Direct Publishing. Because that's the one that I use. And that was the one, it wasn't called KDP at the time, it was just Amazon self-publishing. But that's what started out in 2000 and around 2007, 2008. And by around 2010, the Kindle had really started to take off as well, and ebooks in general had started to take off. They were kind of seen as a fad at first, but between the self-publishing and the Kindles, and especially with the ebooks, Suddenly you had these authors who came along who started to sell a lot of books through self-publishing. Now, obviously, they were the really lucky ones, as today. Nobody goes into self-publishing expecting to sell millions of copies, but there were people like Hugh Howey, who wrote the book Wool. Amanda Hocking became the first millionaire, self-published millionaire, selling 2 million copies of her books over the space of a year. I think she published her first book in 2010, and in a year, over the space of a year, by 2011, she sold 1 million copies of her various books. She was a fantasy author. So it was from then on that self-publishing really took off. And in the last 10 years, a lot has happened. As I said, there are other companies besides Amazon who have stepped in as well. So it has meant that there's a huge opportunity there for authors to self-publish, but it's a double-edged sword in the sense that it is done on the good side. It has made publishing a much more utilitarian effort, because prior to that, it was the big five, as they're known, which is the Simon & Schuster, Penguin, Hachette, Macmillan, and what's the other one? HarperCollins. So they're the five main publishing companies, and still are the only game in town if you want to be traditionally published. But whereas years before, you could actually send your unsolicited manuscript to one of those publishers and an editor possibly might look at it. Nowadays, you can't do that. So you have to go through an agent. So there's 2 hurdles before you can get your book traditionally published. You have to get an agent first. And it's essentially the same process as getting your book published. You have to send it to a group of agents and hope that one of them will take you on. And then the agent does the exact same process all over again by sending it on to an editor that they will know in a traditional publishing house. So it's a tough game, and self-publishing has made it now so that anyone, no matter what their background, and I mean, diversity is a big deal as well, because I don't think it's a controversial thing to say that traditionally publishing has been a middle class white male reserve, basically, and it has been from up until recent years, and still is. Within the big five, they're doing huge diversity programs now to try and bring in authors from other backgrounds and stuff like that. But self-publishing gave authors that opportunity to do that. Working class authors from all sorts of backgrounds who wouldn't ordinarily have had that opportunity. But the flip side of the reason I call it the double-edged sword is because it has given that opportunity to so many people. It also has meant that there are a lot of self-published books out there, and they don't all meet that same quality. And when I say quality, I don't just mean quality of writing. I mean the quality as in the cover design, the editing, all of those things that you would expect from a traditionally published book. A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. So my big thing would be, and what I'm going to talk about in this workshop as well, is that's something that I think anyone who's thinking about self-publishing, the thing you have to think about is the writing is subjective. We all know that. Whether you're sending your manuscript to a traditional publisher or whether you're self-publishing it yourself, whether somebody thinks your writing is good or bad is all subjective. But what's not subjective is the quality of the products that you put out there. So having your manuscript properly edited, having a proper, well-designed cover, all of those things are hugely important, because I'm sure we've all seen, looking at Amazon or whatever sites, we've all seen those books that even, say, don't judge a book by the cover, but you look at the cover and you go, oh my God, who designed that? Like, or, did they let their child run loose with some crayons? And I know that might sound terrible, but it's a fact, and that's what people are thinking. So you have to make sure, if you're going to be someone that's self-publishing, that you're not falling into that, category, basically. And the same when someone buys your book, it can't be riddled with errors and hasn't been edited properly and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment as well. But that's basically where I'm coming from with the self-publishing thing. The opportunity is huge for writers. The opportunity is there. It's relatively low cost, and it can be done relatively easily if you're willing to put a little bit of time into it. But you have to bear in mind that you have to have a really good product, and B, there is a lot of work that goes into it, probably more work than would go into it if you were traditionally published. Now, having said that, we are in the last few years seeing that traditional authors are being asked to be way more proactive than they would have been. Gone is the day where you could be well, his name's gone out of my head now, Thomas Pynchon, or somebody like that, where you could just be a reclusive author and, you didn't have to do anything. Nowadays, traditional publishers want you to pretty much do the same thing you'd have to do as a self-published author, which is to get out there on book tours or, go to bookshops and be very active on social media and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a huge difference at the end of the day, but you do have to be aware that there's going to be a lot of legwork involved as well. It's not as easy as just uploading it to Amazon and then sitting back. And that's another thing I'm going to talk about in a moment as well. So moving on, just very briefly to talk about the companies. I'm just going to talk about Kindle Direct Publishing because that's the only one I have any direct experience with. But I'm just going to bring up a graphic here just to show you a sample of it, just a few of the other ones. So Kindle Direct Publishing is the one we're going to look at in a moment. Barnes & Noble is another a big bookseller in America. They have their own self-publishing platform as well. Smashwords is another one that's quite popular with people as well who don't want to go with Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Kobo is another one that's quite popular. Kobo as well. They have Kobo is kind of similar to the Kindle as well, in that they deal with ebooks as well. So that's a whole other thing as well. Like you can get your books into Kindles and into Kobos, but sometimes Amazon wants you to stay exclusively with them, and that's a whole other thing that would require a longer workshop than this. But basically, anyway, these are some of the other Blurb and Publish Drive. There's a lot of them out there. I would say be very, very careful that if you are looking up somebody that's not Amazon or Barnes & Noble or something like that, that you are careful that it's not somebody who's telling you, you'll pay us $5,000 and we'll publish your book for you, and we'll do this, that, and the other. You need to be very, very careful. You shouldn't be paying out large sums of money to self-publish your book. If you go to a publisher, as in a printer's, it will cost you whatever it costs for a printers. It'll cost you quite a few pounds to do it in a printers. But if you decide to go online with somebody like Amazon and stuff like that, it can be done very low cost. So if you see someone online and they're charging you big money, that to me would be a warning sign from the word go. These are respected ones that, they don't charge the earth to publish a book with them. So be careful. I'm going to talk about KDP now, and I'm just going to bring up another graphic here. KDP stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. It wasn't always called that. It's and it doesn't just mean that you're publishing to Kindle, because you can actually publish your paperback, and now they have a beta version of a hardback as well. So I'll just bring up it. When you sign into your Amazon KDP account, this is the first screen that you will find. So here we have Kindle Direct Publishing. You have your bookshelf. This is what this is. This is where all the books that you've published are. You have your reports, which shows your book sales, which is another really interesting and a really good thing for the self-published author, because you will get to see all the sales that you've made, which if you're a traditional with a traditional publisher, you won't necessarily, you can't check like on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis on how many things you've sold, So that's a good thing as well. Then they have community and marketing, and we're going to talk about marketing a little bit later as well. But this is what you'll get into when you sign up, and it's literally as simple as that. There's no money involved. Most of you probably have an Amazon account anyway. You literally just sign into your Amazon account. You go to KDP, and this is what you'll see. And if you have your book manuscript ready, you're ready to go, literally. You can click on the paperback here if you want to make your paperback. Usually what I do is I make the paperback first and then I go with the Kindle. If you want to, you can literally just publish a Kindle ebook if you're not interested in paperback. And if you feel yourself that you have a lot of an online presence and that you have quite a few followers maybe across your social media, and you think maybe, you're based in Cork or somewhere in Ireland, but you have a lot of people who are interested in reading your stuff in America or Australia or wherever, then going the Kindle ebook route might be a way to go. All those people might just download your ebook. You might sell a lot of them, and the royalties from Amazon are quite good. You get 70% of the cost back if you set your price of your Kindle above, I believe it's $2.99 at the moment. So if you sell for your Kindle for more than $2.99, you will get 70% of that back. So if you sell a lot of ebooks, you can see how you could make a fair few quid off it, So that's the option some people take. They don't even bother going with the print option or trying to get it into bookshops or anything like that. They just go with the ebook option, and it works out great for some people that way. Personally, I always wanted to have paperbacks. I always wanted to have the book launch. I wanted to have it in my local bookstore here in Waterford. So I've always done the paperback, but also the Kindle as well. And once you've done the paperback, it's not a huge big deal to doing the Kindle. The formatting is similar enough. It's not that much more difficult to do. So you'll get into your paperback, your book content. You will upload your manuscript. You have all these free creation tools. Now that's really important. They will offer you paid options. We can format your book for you. We can do a book cover for you. We can do all these things for you, and it will only cost you $200 for this, $200 for that. So it can come to quite a few quid if you were to take them up on that. I didn't take them up on any of them. I just decided to go and try and do it all myself and learned as I went along. And it literally doesn't cost you anything at this end. When you finish, if you decide you're making a paperback, when you finish your paperback and you decide you want to order author copies, then obviously you're going to pay. But it costs nothing at this end to create the book first. So you have all these free creation tools. As it says, you can create anything from children's books, educational content, comics, and manga. So it will, if you're interested in, let's say you wanted to do a poetry book that has images, you can do that as well. If for someone like me, you're just doing a basic text manuscript book, then you will have your finished manuscript, which has been edited and is ready to go. There's no typos, there's nothing in it. And you will put that in and you'll do a little bit of playing around with it, make sure everything looks good on the page. There's great options in it too, great ways of viewing. They'll show you exactly what it's going to look like on the page, which is brilliant. And then you will also have your book cover, which you will have gotten designed by someone who knows what they're doing, because just because I can use Photoshop doesn't necessarily mean I'm a graphic designer. So you'll get somebody to do you a fantastic cover, which will look great. And then you will upload your cover. And again, that's not a hugely difficult process either. For anyone that's used any kind of software that works with books or manuscripts or anything like that before, it's pretty much the same kind of thing. Like if you've used Adobe Illustrator, or if you've used Microsoft, I can't think of the name of the Microsoft one now, but a publisher, Microsoft Publisher. If you've ever used any of those to create any kind of content whatsoever, you'll be well familiar with it. And even if you haven't, you believe me, there's loads of tutorials. You could pick it up. You really don't have to pay them $200-300 to do it. I mean, the option is there. If you are loaded and you want to do that, go for it. But if you're not and you want to do it yourself, you will learn to do it, because I had the notion when I went in, and I learned as I went along. So once you've done all that, then you move on to your descriptions, your keywords, your categories. That gets into a more complicated kind of a thing. And again, you'd need a longer workshop to talk about all the different categories and descriptions and everything else about. But essentially, you're trying to put your description, your keywords, which would be poetry. If you were writing a poetry book, poetry. If it was nature poetry, you put in nature. You know, those kind of things. Categories then would be poetry as well, or you know, it might be contemporary poetry, it might be, you know, some other subcategories like that. The idea being that if a reader comes in to look for your book on Amazon, they may go through the categories and look, and they'll find you know, nature poetry or something like that, or contemporary poetry or whatever, and it'll be easier for them to find a book like yours that would suit them. But there's you know, there's tons of classes and there's tons of articles and books and everything that's been written on the best way to do all these kind of things. So when it comes down to that, you just kind of have to, it's really very much trial and error, you know. And the same applies to Amazon ads, which we're going to talk about briefly as well, when you're actually advertising your book after you've published it. But that's your description. I mean, if you want to just be very basic about it, your description of your book is your blurb. You know, like what's on the back of your book. What does it say about your book on the back? If it's a poetry book, if it's a like one of mine, it's a crime book, then it's got a little blurb about, you know, what's the story. The kind of the elevator pitch, as they say, you know. And then my keywords for mine will be something like thriller, detective, you know, crime, murder, whatever it is, from my detective novels. And then for my most recent one, it was more of a memoir kind of slash fictional memoir, as I like to call it. It's a bit memoir, a bit fiction. So I put it in the, you know, memoir categories, and it's about New York, so I put in New York and as keywords and things like that. But those are the kind of things that you just have to take your time and kind of spend the time on. It is time consuming, but I would say that it was as time consuming for me to prepare the emails, the synopses, and the various cover letters and all that I would have to send to agents. So I found that I was taking up so much time doing that this was actually less time consuming to go and just do this, to self-publish the book myself. And then finally, you have your ISBN. The great thing about Amazon is they give you a free one. So ordinarily, an ISBN would cost you, I don't know, maybe 50 quid or something like that for each book that you publish, but you get a free one with Amazon. They put it straight onto the cover of your book as soon as you've uploaded your cover. So you'll again, that's trial and error as well, because when you're doing your cover, you'll be doing your front cover and your back cover, and you have to be aware that it'll have a big INS thing on the back, ISBN thing on the back, so you don't put any of your blurb or anything down at that point. So that's KDP. Now the other ones that I mentioned earlier on would run along the same lines. You know, you're obviously going to do the same thing. You're going to upload your manuscript, you're going to upload your cover. Some of them you might have to pay for an ISBN or something like that, but they all run along the same lines. And as I say, there's tutorial videos there. You know, there's loads of how-to stuff. If you really want to get stuck into it, you can do it for free, you know. So what happens then in the end, you set your price and you hit publish, and after maybe 2 or 3 days, Amazon checks out, makes sure that everything is okay, and they'll get back to you and say your book is now available. You can order, if you've published a paperback, you can order author copies, and the author copies tend to be a lot cheaper than what the sale price of the retail price of the book would be. So if you want to order 100 or 200 copies of your book for a book launch, you'll get it a lot cheaper than what you're going to be selling it for. So you make a few quid on your book launch at the end of the day. So that's KDP. Now, just to talk a little bit more about what I mentioned about the editing and the cover design, I can't stress enough how important this is, because I myself have seen and read self-published books, Now, having said that, I've also seen and read traditionally published books who both of whom have very bad cover designs and bad editing. So traditional publishers fall into that as well. They're not exempt from it either, when they should be, because they have so much money behind them. But that's another story, I'm sure. But the thing about it is, you don't want, as a self-publishing author, you already have that little bit of stigma that still exists. You know, it's not as there's not as much stigma as there used to be, but there still is a little bit of stigma there, you know, where certain people might look down their noses and say, you know, oh, you know, he's only a self-published author, you know, and they would expect the quality of your work not to be up to the quality of a HarperCollins book or something like that. So you really want to make sure that you don't invite that kind of criticism, basically. And the way to do that is to have your book professionally edited. Now, that can be costly. That's the thing. So you want to shop around, try and find the cheapest editor that you can find, but who is good at the same time. Or if you know somebody who is an editor or works in that line, absolutely 100% go for, you know, ask them to do it for you. You're just looking for a line edit, basically a copy edit. You're not asking for what they call a structural edit. Your book is written, so you're not asking the editor to come back and say, well, I think you could change that bit in the middle there. You know, that's not what you're looking for. You're just looking for someone to make sure, you know, you're not missing an apostrophe, or you didn't misspell a word, or whatever it is. So that's basically your basic copy edit is what you're looking for. So that's not as expensive as, say, a structural edit or something like that. But, you know, they charge by the word, so it still end up being quite expensive. So if you know anyone in the business, or you know anyone that works in that line at all, or you know someone who'll do it on the cheap, then by all means go for it, you know, as long as they're good at what they do. But get your manuscript properly edited, so you know once you go into Amazon, to your KDP or wherever it is you're going, it's as good as you can get it, you know. And then the second thing is the cover, you know, and the cover is hugely important. So you want, again, if you can get it professionally done, absolutely get it done. Or if you yourself know a graphic designer or an artist or somebody like that who will do it for you. At the end of the day, all you need is a JPEG to upload to Amazon, you know. So if someone has a beautiful painting that some friend of yours is a painter and they have a beautiful painting, if you can get a high quality image of that you want to use as your cover, go for it, you know. And that would be, you get a high quality JPEG of that, and that's what you will upload to Amazon. And you will have the opportunity to look at it all. As I said, they have these great tools there that you can look at it all, and you can actually go through page by page your book to make sure it all looks perfect, nothing is off kilter, everything is formatted perfectly. But it's just really important that you get a good cover. I'm just going to give you a look at a couple of the ones that I did. So this first one here is from my first book, and this is one that a graphic design friend of mine did. So this was my first book, Broken Falls, and I had an image that I had found. It was a photograph of a guy standing in front of a waterfall that I loved, and I asked for permission to use it, and he never got back to me. It was somebody in America, I think. I never got a reply, so obviously I couldn't use it. But I gave the image to this friend of mine who does graphic design, and he actually ended up coming up with an even better image than what the original was. I love this so much. The image that he came up with, and you know, it's a striking image. It'll catch your eye. So that was my first, and usually what I would do, unless I have an idea, which I did with one or two of them, of another image that I want on the back. Oftentimes you can just either have a plain back cover to your book, or you can just take the image that you're using on the cover and put that on the back as well, you know, with your blurb on it or whatever. So you can play around with it in different ways like that. So then for the second, my second novel, then another friend of mine is a photographer, a brilliant photographer, and I spotted. Sorry, just skip it. Share this one. I spotted this image on her website, And I just thought this would make, the book was called The Dead Girls, and I just thought this image would be great. So I played around with it a little bit. The image was just of a girl lying in the water, but I played around with it so that it looked like you had this red kind of thing underneath here, so it looked maybe like blood or something like that. So it was actually an image of a young woman lying in the water, but when you put this kind of font and stuff on it, it starts to kind of almost look like it would be somebody in a mortuary or an autopsy or something like that. So for this one, for the other one, the graphic artist had designed the whole thing for me. This one, I decided to play around with the font myself. And so I just took the image from the photographer and I played around with the font myself. And I've kind of done that with the other books, basically. If I can get a really good image from someone I know or from somewhere where I don't have to pay an absolute fortune for it, I'll do that, and I'll then play around with the imagery myself. So the last one I have here then is the latest one, which I'm going to read a little bit from in a little while. And so this is the Ballad of New York. With this one, I kind of wanted to go. It's not a crime story. It's a story about a musician and moving from Ireland to New York. So I kind of wanted to move away in style from that whole the whole thriller look of the book and make it more, I guess, kind of almost like a literary fiction type book. So I got this great image of the guy playing guitar on stage. And then I played around for a long time, this time with the font. There was a lot of different font types and a lot of different sizes and combinations and everything that I went through before I went. So finally settled on that one. But that's kind of, playing around with something like the font is something absolutely, I would say, if you want to do that, go for it. But when it comes to the image itself, you got to go with somebody who's really, really good at what they do. Find someone that can do a really good image for you and get that. As I said, if it's somebody who's, an artist, or somebody like that, all the better, fantastic, and just credit them. Don't forget to credit them. That's sometimes that's what happens when you're doing the self-publishing thing. You'll do everything and then just forget to credit the person that did the actual front cover for you or something, But so that's, the two main keys to self-publishing. I think that kind of sums up everything there is that comes before your book is published. So just before we kind of get on to any questions and answers that you might have, I want to talk about marketing and what happens after the publication of the book, because I feel like the marketing end of things is as important, I think, as the publishing end of things, but also I think it's something that people think maybe can be a little bit easier than it actually is. There's a huge amount of legwork that goes into marketing, and you need to be aware of that going into it. But as I said earlier, there also is now at the moment in traditional publishing as well. You'll all see it yourselves. If you're friends with any authors, you'll have seen it on Facebook. They're out in all the Easons and all the various places. Caroline, this. We share so many of the same author friends, and they all would pop up on Facebook. And it's lovely to see them, in fairness, out in Easons or wherever, signing their books, but they are, that's traditional publishing, and they are required to be on the street as well, and to have a big social media presence as well. So there's not a huge big difference anymore between self-publishing and traditional publishing when it comes to getting your name out there and getting the word out there about your book, So for me, what I would say first and foremost is your local bookshop. So wherever your local bookshop is, your local bookshop could be, a little village I'm living in Tramore, so we don't have a bookshop as such in Tramore, but I have a couple of places in Tramore that always sell my books. And my local bookshop is the Book Centre in Waterford City, and they have been so good to me ever since the first book. I've had so many launches in there of my books. They always take them. I'm editing I'm co-editing. I co-founded and co-edited a literary journal, and they've taken our literary journal as well. They've sold that. So they're a fantastic, they're an independent bookshop. There's 3 of them, I think, around the country. One in Waterford, one in Wexford, and one, I can't remember, somewhere else, but at Kilkenny possibly. But they're fantastic. So if you've got a relationship with your local bookshop like that, that's your first port of call, I would say, because as a self-publishing author, it is very difficult to get your book into the likes of Eason's and stuff like that. And the reason is very, very simple. Eason's book, most bookshops work through Eason's. Eason's are a wholesaler. So unless you can get your book into Eason's as a wholesaler, the other bookshops around the country, who they deal with Eason's, so they're not going to stock your book unless they can get it through Eason's most of the time. Okay, there might be exceptions to that, but that's the way it works, and I know that from experience because I've spoken to many people in the bookshops, and it's not that they don't want to stock your self-published book. It's just that that's not how the system works. Their system is set up to deal with the big wholesalers. There's 2 of them. There's Eason's and Argosy, I think, is the other one, and their systems are set up to deal with, you know, either one or both of those, and they just can't take your book if it's not in one of those places. And it's very, very difficult to get your book into Eason's if it's a self-published book. So that's why I'm saying, if you have a relationship with people in a bookshop, that's a great thing. You know, capitalize on that. Get your books into your local bookshop, get into your local libraries. All your local library will take your, all libraries in Ireland will take a few copies of your book. They'll usually buy the copies of your book. As we mentioned earlier on, I've been very, very lucky again with the Waterford Librarians. And the Waterford Librarians, just this past December, chose my latest book as one of their best reads of 2021, which was such an amazing honor from them. But they've been great to me as well, you know. And it's not a case of those guys playing favoritism either. They do tend to stock all local authors. You know, if you're a local author of a library, they will want to have your book in their library. So libraries, your local bookshop, your local library, that's your first port of call, because the word of mouth from libraries is fantastic as well. You know, a lot of people don't buy books in bookshops or from Amazon or whatever. A lot of them just borrow from the library, and the word of mouth that can spread around from that is fantastic as well. So that's your bookshops. Then you've got social media, and obviously that's a huge, big thing. But like, I would say that, you know, if you're someone that doesn't like going online, it's going to be a tough sell to sell a self-published book. You really do have to be out front and center online, selling yourself, you know. And none of us like doing it, you know. We all cringe every time we have to put up the post and go like, buy my book. But that's, you know, that's just what you have to do. And as I say, it's not that different nowadays for traditionally published authors either. You can't, you know, it's gone are the days when you could lie on your shalong and smoke your cigarette and let your publisher do your work for you. You know, you got to be out there doing it nowadays, no matter how you're published. So I think if you're going to be if you're going to go the self-published route, you have to be active on social media. The different social media, it all depends what you're more comfortable with. At the moment, TikTok, books on TikTok now have taken off, and you have all these authors making videos on TikTok. Apparently that's doing really well for them. I'm personally not one of them, but it's doing really well for some authors. So yeah, you know, Instagram, there's hashtags on Instagram for books, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, obviously, all of these kind of things. You do have to be active in some way on some of them, you know, and you can make it fun as well, you know what I mean? You can interact with people, you can do all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be really kind of cringeworthy stuff, you know, but it is required. You obviously, how else are you going to get the word out there? You know, you got to do that. Newspapers and traditional media, that again, it depends. Do you have a local newspaper? Do you have a local radio station? All of those kind of things, you know. you're constantly pushing, you're just constantly pushing, you know, but it can make the difference. So I mean, for someone like me, I have 2 local newspapers. If the guys in the local newspapers give me a good review of my book and they say it's on sale in the local bookstore, and I happen to get an interview on the local radio as well, that can add up to a lot of sales, you know, just from the local bookstore. And also, if you're online, you can also be getting a lot of sales through the likes of Amazon and stuff like that from people abroad who might not necessarily be able to, you know, wouldn't ordinarily have been able to go into the bookstore and buy your book because they're able to buy it on Amazon now. And the other thing then, of course, is, speaking of Amazon, there's Amazon ads, but that again is another workshop in itself. But it is, there is a whole other world there of Amazon ads where you can advertise your book on Amazon. Now that requires some outlay of money, obviously, and you have to kind of know what you're doing. So that's something that is, you know, as I say, it's that alone is a workshop in itself. There's loads of people offering those kind of workshops, and there's millions of articles been written about that stuff, but that's a whole other thing. But that's for the online stuff. And I mean, there is, I will say one thing about Amazon. I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, and rightly so, but really for the self-published author, to have the reach that you need to have, Amazon is the only game in town, especially when you realize that you most likely won't get your book into the likes of Eason's or Hodges and Figgis or any of these kind of places if it's a self-published book. So you've got to be looking at places like Amazon, as much as you might not like the idea of that, you know. That's just how it is. I saw a young girl that I know in Waterford now who was probably up till now have, you know, lined up Jeff Bezos and shot him in the street, and she had to admit defeat and go, you know what, I want to get my book out, my book of poetry out, so I'm just going to have to do it through Amazon, as much as I don't like doing it. So that's just the way it is. Amazon, you know, as far as a platform for selling your book, it's really the biggest platform, obviously, that there is. So if you want to, you know, you just got to kind of, you know, you suck it up and go with it until things change and we're able to get our books into more stores. And this is one thing that does kind of grate on me when I see stuff online where people talk about support your local bookstore. You know, I am 100% behind that. I love my local bookstore. They're so good to me. But the problem is saying to a self-published author, support your local bookstore, there's nothing they can do about it. They can't get in, you know, with the exception of maybe your specific local bookstore. There's no way of a self-published author getting into other bookstores. So the only thing we can do is send people to Amazon, you know. So it's not that we're trying to take away from the local small bookstores. There's just no way of us to get in them, the way the game is rigged at the moment with Eason's and stuff. So unless that changes and we can get into those kind of bookstores, as I say, the only game in town really is Amazon, you know. It's not going away, you know. Kindle is a huge seller. If you don't take away the paperbacks altogether, Kindles are huge, a huge market. So you want your book on a Kindle, you know, if you're going to be self-published author. If you're traditionally published, your book's going to be on a Kindle anyway. So if you're a self-published author, you want your book on the Kindle as well, because it's a huge market. So you got to go down the Amazon route. Now, I don't know how we're doing for time. Do you want me to do the Q&A now, Stan? Yeah? Cool. Okay. So I guess if anyone has, you probably have a few questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Padraig, is it?
Yeah.
Hiya, Padraig.
Hi. Okay, so I listened very carefully to you. You know, your experience sort of mirrored a lot of mine. Okay. In that I also went through a self-published experience in 2017. What I got from what you were saying is that you have done all the work yourself, you know, which is design, with help, designed the book cover, worked through the whole process, editing, everything. So my question is, after doing all of that, why Amazon? Why not just simply send your PDF off to a local printer and get it printed there? I mean, that's what I did. I got my ISBN. You can get 10 on ISBNs for 130 quid, and you can become a publishing house yourself. So why Amazon? What did it give you? Or was it just a printer for you? Outside of the ebook format, I mean.
Well, yeah. It was a printer to begin with. Yeah, it was a printer in the beginning because I was trying to figure out how I could do it cheaply,
Sure.
without having to pay a lot of money to a printer. So that's why I went to it first. But what it has become since then, over the space of up to now, what is my 7th book, it's become a thing of the reach, basically, because I do have people who will come back and read the next book in the series or whatever, who live in Melbourne or live in Los Angeles or places like that. And they simply couldn't get the book unless I go through the whole process of sending those books myself by post, and it's just that much easier to do through Amazon,
Okay, but like you can sell through Amazon without going through Kindle publishing, right?
You can. In the same way that you can sell through Kobo and through Barnes and Noble as well, without doing it as well. But I found the Amazon KDP platform just very, very easy to use. And I actually really enjoyed the process of designing the book and doing all that myself. So that's why I decided to actually continue to do it that way, rather than to go to a printer's or to try it with one of the other companies. I just really liked the platform of the KDP,
Derek, Patrick Close, thank you very much for. Patrick Close has a question. Do you want to say it? You post the question yourself, Patrick? You're muted.
Derek, in the YouTube interview with Moza, you mentioned publishing under another name, pen name and nom de plume. Are there any factors we should be aware of if we wish to do so?
That's not something I've done yet. The reason I said that was because I was talking about hybrid publishing. There's a few people I know who have done that. Now, they didn't publish under a different name, because what happened in the cases I was talking about was one a friend of mine, an author, Hazel Gaynor, she had published a book called The Girl That Came Home. It was a book about the Titanic, and it sold really, really well as a self-published book. But as it happened, it was picked up by I think it was HarperCollins. And it was like a fairy story thing. I think an editor picked it up somewhere. I don't know, did she have it in an airport bookstore or something like that? And the editor picked it up, and they offered her a deal with HarperCollins. So she ended up having published and done very, very well at publishing her first few books. She ended up going with a traditional publishing contract, and is still in that contract. Then there's another chap called Mark Dawson who went the opposite way around. He has sold probably millions, I imagine, in Kindle, and was doing very, very well for himself in Kindle sales, when he was approached by another one of the big traditional publishers to for his books to be published in paperback. So he actually has a contract to publish paperback with, say, somebody like HarperCollins, but he holds the rights to his Kindles and his ebooks, and he still sells those. What I was saying to Mose was, if you were to go down that route where you actually decided, having self-published, that you were going to go with a traditional publisher, it's still possible to go down the route of publishing your own ebooks, maybe not paperbacks, but publishing your own, ebooks separately. So, for instance, let's say in the morning I got signed to a traditional publisher for 3 books in a series about my detective character, but I decided that I wanted to also go and publish maybe YA books or something different like that. It would be possible for me to do that within the contract with the publishing house. I might be required to take on a pen name or a nom de plume, as you say. But I don't, from my experience of people with that, I don't think there's any problem with it. They're happy to do that, because you kind of have this, you know, people always know. It's not like years ago when Stephen King was Batman, you know, for a few years and nobody knew, and it was a big thing. Nowadays, you know, if someone writes under the name Derek Flynn and then he writes somewhere else under DF whatever, you know, or something like that, people will know it's the same guy. And the feedback, it will work both ways. If he has fans of one type of the book, they might buy the other. So the traditional publishers are really happy with that, and they have no problem with you doing that, you know. Is that what your question was, Patrick?
Aye, so it was.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
No problem.
Okay, Critical Mick returns. Could you pose your question, please?
Yes, thank you. I had to drop off for a little bit. Derek, thank you for this. It's wonderful. It's really lighting up a light bulb, and it's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you.
Two questions, if I can. Number one, if I remember correctly, the Dead Girls, it got some good radio promo. Awesome. How did you get on the radio, and how well did that translate into sales? Like, how well did that one sell in round numbers?
Oh, I don't know. I don't actually know off the top of my head the numbers for that one now, 7 books later. But I do know that was one of the better selling ones. Like, none of, you know, in fairness, like, I'm not going to pretend that any of these books are bestsellers or anything like that. You know, in the self-publishing line, as much as in the traditional publishing line, you know, it's a tough game, and you know what I mean. It's the lucky few that get the big numbers, you know. But for me, it was always about, and I'm sure it is for most of you as well, it was about getting the work out there more than anything, because I'd spent so long trying to get published with a traditional publisher and almost coming, you know, that close, and because of the agents, you know, agents, and then the agent would say, oh, we just took on a guy who's, you know, similar to you, and sorry about that, blah, 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 but you'd have come so close, you know. And I just felt, I think the work I have is good. It's either going to sit in a drawer, or else I'm just going to get up off my arse and do something about it and get it out there myself. And so that, for me, was always kind of the first thing, you know, more than anything else. I don't think anyone goes into the business thinking, maybe hoping, but not thinking that they're going to make loads of money off it. But to get back to your question, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It did sell better than some of the other ones, because it did get some really good radio coverage. How I got that, I think, if I remember correctly, was it was the Ricochet Book Club on Facebook has this big book club on Facebook that has so many hundreds of thousand members or something like that. And the Dead Girls was actually voted, I think it came in number 11 or something in the best books of whatever year. I think it was 2019 or something like that. And because of that, I think that's how I got the radio coverage out of that. And also a lot of the people, like, again, you know, this is the social media thing again, never underestimate something like that, you know. I forget how many, I think, I might be wrong, but I think it's something like about 50,000 members in that book club or something like that. It's crazy, load of people in it anyway. And, you know, so many of those will have seen that end of year poll, and will have seen the Dead Girls in there at number 11. So there was quite a few sales that came from that. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about with Padraig there about why you use Amazon. You know, a lot of the people in that Ricochet book club, even though it's an Irish book club, they come from all over the world. So if someone sees the Dead Girls by Derek Flynn, number 11, they might go, oh, look up Amazon, see. If I'm there, they might order it. If I'm not, they'll probably just forget about me. You know, they're not going to be wandering down to my local bookstore. They're over in Australia or America or somewhere like that. So I've got one chance to grab them, and my best chance is that, you know, if I'm there on Amazon and they can see me, you know. So I just see someone there saying, post the recording, there's so much to take in. I know there's so much to take in, and I hope I haven't gone overboard on any of it. It's just, there is a lot of information, and you know, there would be a lot more as well. But yeah, Mick, basically, in answer to your question, yeah, that was The Dead Girls was one of the more popular ones. I'd like to think because of the writing, but also I know because of the Ricochet Book Club, and the reach that has, and that I was very grateful and lucky that happened. I hope that answers that question.
Sweet, yeah. Just a quick follow-on. I know there's other people who have questions. Of all the books you've written in crime fiction, which is your favorite? Which would you recommend?
I would say my personal favorite is the one we're talking about, The Dead Girls. I've just got a little I don't know what it is that just edges out the other ones for me, but there is a slight thread that runs through the 3 John Ryan detective books. So I always kind of tell people, if you can, start with Broken Falls, the first one, because they can be read independently of each other, but there's a slight thread. You'll pick it up if you're reading the second book. You'll pick up what the thread is, no problem. But I think it's nice if you can start with Broken Falls, and you'll see a little bit of a thread that runs through all the books, then all the way up, kind of.
Sweet, I'll pick up a copy. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, Mick.
Thank you. Lauren, do you still have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Derek. This has been really fantastic. Couldn't come at a better time for me as well. I'm sorry for having my camera off. I'm eating my dinner, and I thought I'd save you all looking at that. Thanks. My question is, recently I self-published with a gang of other people. I won't get into it, but it was an anthology of kind of Irish writing, poetry and prose, and all the proceeds were donated to the Sexual Violence Centre Cork. But I really struggled, and we got it in some like local bookshops and stuff like that. Didn't go down the Amazon route, so definitely we'll be looking more at that next time. But what I really struggled with was the promotion of the book. So like I joined a bunch of groups on social and Facebook. So like that was kind of one of the main ways that I had. But I actually emailed like nearly every local newspaper in the country, with like a pre-done article about it and everything like that. And I've got even like most people didn't even reply to me to say no thanks. Do you know what I mean? So I was just wondering, do you have any guidelines or like tips or things we should be looking at in terms of the promotion? I know obviously now just being on Amazon, being in that search engine, doing the Amazon ads and stuff, but kind of like outside of that, would there be any recommendation?
I definitely would, and that's a great question, Lauren. But I'm actually surprised with given that it was a fundraiser for what it was, that you didn't get more reaction. I'm really surprised at that. But yeah, no, I think I would use again The Dead Girls as an example there. There was, and also the new book as well, I can use as an example. I had with The Dead Girls, it was based on the true story of a truck driver who had abducted young runaway girls in America. And so there was an undercurrent of a true story underneath it. And so I kind of used that as the selling point of the book when I went to talk about it, because it was a fascinating story. And I managed to get an article into the Irish Times about that story, and sold the book on the back of that as well. And again, like, I don't have any connections with the Irish Times or anything like that. It was a big deal for me to get an article in there. So it was just purely on the human level of it. So I think I would say, if you were approaching like for something like you were talking about there, especially if you're approaching them, I think maybe if there's a human element or one person's story that kind of can be told. Again, with the latest book, I touched on 9/11 in the book. I talked about it quite a lot in the book. So I wrote an article for the Irish Times again on the anniversary of 9/11, just talking about that and talking about the book as well. And again, I suppose I was telling the story of 9/11 from my personal viewpoint. So again, it was that human element. I think when it comes to media like that, and you see it yourself in the newspapers, on morning TV and all that, it's all about the personal story. If an author comes on and they have a personal story to tell, they love that kind of thing. So a great way of getting, on TV, on the TV shows or the radio shows or into the newspapers, is if there's a human element to the story, a personal element to the story that you can give them, basically. If it is, it works great for anyone here that may be writing, some kind of memoirs or even, poetry that is autobiographical or anything like that. it's, you know, that's a great way of selling your book, to say, you know, this is a story that's really personal to me because blah, blah, blah. And if there's an interesting angle on it that you can sell, that works great for them as well, you know, which is why I'm surprised it's such a cause that you would feel like it would be front and center and something that they would want to talk about, you know, in the newspapers.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's definitely loads now that I can work with. And I was wondering when I was sending it, like maybe it was the way that I was telling, like I maybe had the ingredients, but then I wasn't telling it, you know, right. And like even with the process, do you know what I mean? So for the Irish Times, did you like, well, number one, my question is like, what did you put in the subject line? You know, like, you know, hot new book, or, you know.
I think for the first one, for the Dead Girls, I think I put the subject line was something along the lines of the true story of a, you know, a serial killer or something like that, something, you know, eye-catching like that. And then I had gotten it through to the editor of the online books section. So I sent him an article for the next one then, which was good a couple of years later now. It wasn't immediately afterwards, but I just sent it to the same guy and just said, look, I think the subject line was 9/11 anniversary or something like that. And I just said, look, I was there on 9/11. I have a book coming out talking about it. I was wondering, would you be interested in an article talking about the day from my point of view, from a personal point of view? So yeah, it may be that, you know, you needed to get a little bit more just personal in the, you know, about it, not necessarily naming names of anybody or anything like that, but just talking about a more personal approach, you know, to what the subject matter is and what the organization is that you're supporting, basically, you know.
Great. Thank you so much. The opportunity to ask you a question is just gold. So
thank you. Not at all. And thank you.
I've got, well, 2 or 3 more questions here.
Okay.
Therese, you had a question about prices.
Yeah.
Therese? Therese Burke?
Therese,
yeah. Thank you, Derek. It was
Therese.
fabulous workshop. I listened to the YouTube thing, which was equally fabulous.
Thank you.
Really great. And I'm from New York.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Whereabouts in New York live?
I live in Sayville, which is across the sea from Fire Island.
Oh, God, I love Fire Island. Yeah, I've been out there loads of times.
Everyone loves Fire Island, yeah.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Well, I mean, I also saw the same thing that you did with 9/11, which was absolutely palpable. The outpouring of networking was unbelievable. But anyway, this is great. I wondered, how do you determine the cost of like an ebook or a paperback book or a hardcover book? How do you determine that?
Oh, usually I just look around and see what other people are selling their books. Like I would have some friends who would be crime writers and stuff like that. I literally just have a look and see what theirs are selling for, and I just set it at around the same price. Like I don't want to overprice and set it at a price that's too much. If in my local bookshop, they have their own kind of set price. It's like, here's what we normally sell our books for, they'll say to me. And that's also something to remember as well. If you are self-publishing and you are going to your local bookstore, they usually will take a third of the price of whatever they sell it for, you know, and the rest goes back to you. So that's just another thing to be aware of as well. But yeah, they'll say, you know, we sell our paperbacks for $12.99, $13.99, whatever it is. So I just say, yeah, that's fine.
I sort of had a follow-up question. I'm cheating asking too, but the Dead Girl, I love the cover. I love the idea of it, and I can imagine how good it is. I wonder if you thought about like movies or series show, because I'm in love with detective stories. I watch all the European detective stories.
Me too. Yeah. A couple of people have said it to me, like about the Dead Girls especially, and also the first one, Broken Falls, because it's kind of got that. It's set in Newfoundland, the first book, and so it's got that whole scenic thing going on there as well. And it's something I would love to do. I know a few people that are kind of Irish filmmakers who are kind of getting into making their first big features now and stuff like that. I would love to hand one of them a script at some stage of one of the books. And it's also something I'd love to try my hand at, is writing a screen. I've written plays, so I'd love to try and write a screenplay for one of the books as well. So yeah, I guess it's just a case of kind of watch this space, hopefully, maybe sometime in a few years.
And Amazon is producing great detective stories, you know, the series, a lot of the series, you know.
Oh, it's fabulous. Bosch and yeah, some of the other ones. Yeah, they're brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Amazon Studios. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Therese.
Thank you very much. Alexandra, you had a question about book launches.
Yeah, you mentioned doing a book launch in a bookstore.
Yeah.
I know that Amazon prints on demand. It's not like the traditional publishers who have like 2,000 or 5,000 or more printed. So how do you actually sell paperbacks through Amazon?
So with the book launch, is that what you mean? How do you sell the paperbacks? Yeah. So
your book into the bookstore when Amazon prints on demand.
Yeah. So when you get to the end of doing the whole the book cover and all of that stuff, and you set your price, you publish, you're given the option to buy author copies. So you can buy as many author copies as you want. And as I said, they're a lot cheaper than what they would retail for, say, on the site. So if you have a launch coming up, and as happened to me a number of times, and you have a rough idea how many people you think will be there, or how many of the people that are going to be there will actually buy the book, which in fairness is most of the people usually. So let's say you think 100 people you could get to your book launch. So you decide, I'm going to order 100 books. So you order 100 author copies. If the author copy was, say, €5, so you'd have to pay out, obviously, yourself that amount. But then, you know, once you're selling them in the bookstore, then you're probably selling it at, you know, 12 or 13 euro. So less the bookstore's cut, you know, the rest is your profit, basically. And so what literally I would bring those into the bookstore on the day of the launch. They'll set them all out for you on the tables, same as any traditional publisher would do with a book launch. And I've done it for nearly all of the books. The last one I did a different kind of a book launch. I did a launch in an art gallery in Waterford where I had some people playing music as well. And then I did some readings from the book and stuff like that. So that's great fun as well. You know, you can play around with that kind of thing as well when you're doing your self-publishing as well. You can decide to do an event rather than it doesn't just have to be a book launch, you know. But yeah, you're ordering your author copies and you're physically bringing those into the bookstore yourself. And usually with my local bookstore, they'll take whatever is left over from the launch, if there's anything left over, and any more that I might have there, they'll take them and they'll stock them. And if they sell them, they'll contact me and tell me to bring in some more, you know. So you're doing all the grunt work yourself, so to speak, you know, the work that would normally be done by the publishers themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Order a lot of author copies.
Or order a lot of copies, yeah. But just try and figure out how many you think, so that you don't get left with tons of them afterwards. This is the thing, yeah.
Catherine.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, no, my phone's just gone off. Oh.
That was good timing, Catherine.
Okay. Do you still need an agent if you're self-publishing?
You don't need one, but if you do get to the wonderful heights that some of the people I mentioned earlier on do, and you're selling loads of books, you can get one for the reasons of business, basically. You know, it becomes, you've got too many interview requests that you can't handle yourself anymore. You need someone to handle that for you. So you basically need an agent / manager. And at that point, when you're making loads of money, you'll have no problem finding an agent. You know, they'll be more than happy to take you on because you're making loads of money and they're getting their 10-15%. It's when you're a nobody and you're trying to flog your book, it's that it makes it tough to get the agent. But yeah, if you're lucky enough to be selling books and to be making some cash, and you find yourself in a situation where, you know, I could really do with someone to help me out here with the business end of things, yeah, then you can just go to an agent and say, hey, look, I published X amount of books. Here's my sales. You know, I'm making this much. It feels like you and I would be a good fit. Would you be interested? You know.
Problem is that I'm just a poet, and poets never get rich.
That's the problem, isn't it? But
Can
believe me, crime writers don't always get rich either.
Poets get rich in North Korea and South Korea.
Derek.
Twice.
Max, you have a question about your a contract that you was involved in? Is it very complicated?
No. Oh gosh, yeah, there we are.
Hey,
No,
Mike.
I was very interested. Thanks, Derek. It's brilliant, and I have heard of you. No,
Thank you.
just in my own. It's a bit like being on a fundraising committee. You know, I did my previous experience was in music, publishing CDs and a single for charity. Very much thought I could do it and send it away, but found that I had to schmooze, and I felt I sold my soul to the devil then, because the whole concept sounded tacky when I was trying to flog it then to sell it. So I was around touching up newspapers and getting articles in them, and then it sounded like, oh, she's done a charity CD. Oh, bullshit, like, you know. I felt it lost all the ethos.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I felt I pimped myself. Oh, I shouldn't use that language on the internet, but I really did have to do it, and I discovered, to my horror, that I had to do concerts to sell the CD, and I felt, you know, I'm under the scene musician. I wasn't kind of equipped for both there in the public, but I did 10 kind of public concerts, and it is no harm to do it. But I had, when I was very green and writing a lot of poetry at the beginning in 2012, I didn't know anything about what to do. So I looked up the internet and said, oh, you publish it. Yeah, who do you go to? I don't want to go to an agent. I'll self-publish now with Author House. And Author House is a bit of a name. I shouldn't be saying too much about
oh no, I've heard of them.
denigrating any name online, which
no, that's fair, but I think it's no harm, Mags, in letting people know, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, I shouldn't run down, because a lot of people have done very well with them. It's just that they're a controversial brand, and they certainly have pursued me. I went off and I paid the money, says, I really am interested in the image, and I wanted to publish images to do with little short portraits, and I really wanted a book that would sell it. And going through formal publishing, it was going to be quite expensive. And I wanted like 40 images, 40 poems, and then keep shifting them out up there and, you know, put them up somewhere in the cloud that I'd never gonna have to think about them. But I found that they were giving me a package that was good for 40 images with the little, but my son just talked me right out of his mom. Give them enough money, just don't even go with publishing the book. Don't give them the rest. He said, just, I had paid him. And I
think he did the right thing there, and that comes back to what I said about earlier on. You got to be really careful. I know it happened to a friend of mine. His mother was writing a series of children's books. She got a contract, and she was over the moon. She thought she'd made it, and then looked a bit more into it and found out she was paying them money to be published. You never pay people to publish you. You know, you might have to.
I'm guilty. I left it there. I haven't gone with the book, and they got the money, and they keep coming back after me. But a lot of my poems became songs, and I felt I'd be giving them all away, my lyrics, and that they'd have the ownership of the songs. They said they wouldn't, but my son said, Mom, stop right now, just leave it. Just leave it, don't go any further. Yeah. So I did make a big mistake really when I was young and innocent. I just went down the road of learning about poetry and being an apprentice and going out there and learning about it. And if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have dreamt.
Podrick just said it there now. Yeah, amen to that. Vanity publishers are a curse, and they are. You know, like as I said earlier on, vanity publishing is what it was called in the 90s, and but they still exist. Vanity publishers do exist, and they're there just to make money out of you. You know, you got to be just really careful, and you just got to do the research before you go into it. And I kind of. I mentioned the 6 places there that I was talking about, like, you know, and I for me, the Amazon, at least I know that they're not out to take money from me in that sense, you know. So like that's why I'm mentioning them. You know, I know obviously a lot of people have problems with Amazon, blah blah blah, all the rest of it, but the one thing I do know is that if you go in there and you decide you don't want to pay a load of money to publish your book, you don't have to. That much I do know. So I would say definitely research, be very, very careful. And just the alarm bells will go off if if they're telling you it's going to cost you 500 for this and 500 for that, 500 for the other thing. You know, it's money that you don't have to pay other places. That's when the alarm bells should definitely go off, you know.
Okay. Thank you very, very much, Derek. Maybe we can continue with the reading. I mean, I think
absolutely
more questions here, and it'd be really great for you.
Yeah. So this is the I showed you the cover earlier on, Ballad of New York, and as I said, it's a kind of a fictional. It's a semi-fictional, semi-memoir book, because a lot of the I went to New York when I was 25. Myself and my wife and my young child went at the time. The reason I don't call it a memoir is because I changed some of the facts about it. So the character in the book is a single guy on his own going to New York. But a lot of the events that happened to him happened to me, and including the talk about 9/11 that I mentioned in the interview as well. But I'm just going to start off with the first paragraph. It's quite short. So this is the Ballad of New York. Each chapter has a quote from a song, because there's a lot about music in the book. And the quote for chapter 1 is from a Smiths song. It's "If you have 5 seconds to spare, I'll tell you the story of my life." Chapter 1. I'm in hell. There was another ring of hell that Dante forgot, and I'm in it. Broke and hot in Brooklyn, New York City. Park Slope, to be exact, in the middle of the hottest July on record. So hot the kids don't have the energy to bust open the fire hydrants. I'm sitting in front of the fridge, the icebox open, a fan on top blowing the cold air into my face. I might as well be pissing in the wind. Every other apartment has an air conditioner balancing precariously on the window ledge, the drip, drip of water like Chinese torture, telling me just how cool it is inside. The Spanish woman I've sublet this place from has a fan. One fan. But I shouldn't complain. This is what I wanted, right? This is the life of the artist. One man's heroic struggle to forge in the smithy of his soul the uncreated conscience of his race, or something. And I think, what would Henry Miller do? It's night, and it's even hotter if that's possible. Outside my window, a bunch of black guys practice their raps for each other, on and on for hours. No one praises anyone, no one asks for their turn. Someone just raps for a while, and when he finishes, someone else starts. I wonder if 50 years ago, another bunch of black guys stood on the same spot practicing their doo-wops. I like Park Slope. Just down the block from me is the bakery where an obsessive compulsive Jack Nicholson took Helen Hunt for breakfast in a movie. This isn't the moneyed Park Slope. That's a few blocks north of here, beside Prospect Park, in the old brownstones that look like they're waiting patiently for Edith Wharton to come back. This is Southern Park Slope, a working class neighborhood with rappers on the corner and entire families of Hispanics on the stoop and Spanish landladies who are impervious to heat. New York is funny like that. Back in Ireland, if you lived in a rich neighborhood, you'd have to walk a mile to find a poorer one. Here you just have to walk a few blocks. People talk about how impersonal the city is, but that's what's so great about it. It's a level playing field. There's rich and poor, but they're all thrown together in this stew. There are opportunities for everyone in New York, which means that piss poor artist you just turned away from your club could be the next big thing. The people with money recognize this, and with the exception of the old money relics strapped to their oxygen masks on the Upper West Side, most welcome it. Oftentimes you can eat at the best table, even if you don't have a pot to piss in. Farrell's, the bar up the block, sums up this neighborhood perfectly. It's been there since the 30s, which is a lifetime in New York terms, and its exterior and interior appear to have changed little in that time. It's a hangout for cops and firefighters. That means there are no chairs, tables, or bar stools, but there are giant TV screens showing baseball, and they serve one type of beer, Budweiser. And God help you if you ask for a cocktail. Oh, and there are no glasses. They serve beer in 32-ounce styrofoam cups, because who wants to waste time washing glasses when there are more important things like watching baseball to be done? My apartment is a one-bedroom walkthrough. It's on the ground floor at the front, and the little garden outside, which is basically a couple of window boxes, is tended by my landlady. She left New York for the summer, probably to go find somewhere that's even hotter, which means for the next few months it's tended by me. That might not be bad if it wasn't for a sun that reduces all living things to a withered mass in a matter of minutes. I've been living in New York for 6 months. I play songs, that's what I do. Not always the songs I want to play, but it doesn't matter. I play bars from the Bronx to Long Island. Sometimes they're hanging from the rafters, and sometimes it's one drunk asleep in his beer and a bartender doing the crossword. Doesn't matter. Playing the shittiest songs to the shittiest crowd in the shittiest bar is still paradise compared to what I left behind. Sometimes you get paid, sometimes you sit at the bar all night waiting for someone to arrive, only to be sent home at 2 a.m. with nothing more than a beer buzz. Doesn't matter. Even now, when the gigs have dried up and I'm basically a puddle of sweat on the floor of the apartment, it doesn't matter. What does matter is what I'm doing and where I'm doing it. Playing music for a living in New York City, the thing I've dreamt of doing since I was 15. What matters is that I'm here doing this and not where I was 6 months ago. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Derek. It's always a good sign for a workshop when you run way over time. We've got a lady in, God, is it Cyprus? We've got somebody who's 2 hours ahead of us time-wise anyway, waiting to appear first on the open mic, so I'll move on very quickly.
Okay.
I'll just say, and Derek is a friend of mine, and he's been hugely helpful for me in developing my own work over the last year or so. But The Ballad of New York is a great read. Like Derek, I've read lots of self-published books, and some of them 3 pages in, I'm just going, oh my God, this is awful. But The Ballad of New York is a really, really good read.
Thanks so
I
much,
really
Sam.
enjoyed it, so I'd highly recommend it.
Sorry, before I actually have to run off, but I wanted to mention before I go, I mentioned the literary journal. It's the Wax Lemon, and you guys are our target audience. So we're actually opening to submissions for our 4th issue on January 15th. It'll be open to submissions for a month. So if any of you poets, short story writers, flash fiction writers, whatever it is, if you'd like to submit, we'd love to see your stuff. You can just check us out on Facebook. Just look up The Waxed Lemon, and our Stan would have the link anyway. So
I'll stick the link in the chat there before you go, Derek.
Oh, I will do, actually. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Derek. Really appreciate it. And the feedback's been amazing, and we'll probably get a bit more of it at a later stage. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to hand you over to Catherine Ronan, because she's looking after the open mic section of the night.
I just have one question for Derek before he runs off there. Is there a particular sort of poetry that you're looking for? Be it kind of, narrative poetry, lyrical poetry?
No, we literally get everything. Last month we got, I think, so over 300 submissions of poems, and they ranged, like, they literally ran the gamut. No, just whatever you're doing, lads, send it in, and we'd love to read it. And obviously, as I say to everyone, like, we publish about 40 pieces. That's including short fiction and art and stuff as well, photography. So obviously, we have to say sorry, no to a lot of really good stuff. So all I would say in advance is, if we do say no, please don't take it as any reflection on your writing. We get so many submissions, but seriously, we'd love to see your stuff. So I'm going to stick I'm just going to stick the Facebook page. Did that work? No, let me try that again. I'll stick the Facebook page in here. So once the 15th, is the opening date, and there'll be a pinned post. There it is. There'll be a pinned post there with all the submission guidelines on it. So it's so please do submit. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you all again so much. It was brilliant.
Thank you, Derek. It was brilliant altogether.
I'll stop talking now and leave the open mic.
Okay. Thanks very, very, very much. Can I ask, before I stop recording this part, Rosalind, could you please give your announcements now about the Blue Mondays?
Very much. We have published, self-published, the Blue Mondays poetry anthology. It came out just before Christmas. We published it by way of actually copying and sharing the costs. And we're at the moment pushing it out there 50% in aid of Cork Simon, that is fighting homelessness. The book costs €10. It's probably a lot that I don't know if the chat will take the whole thing that I wrote, but in the start of it's definitely the PayPal link and the email that you can order by, that goes directly to John, our member. Hello, there. Sorry, trying to get back to the screen. Still not took it. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it differently. Copy, paste. Now. Okay. I am announcing in that the Blue Mondays anthology. There's the price in it, the fact that 50% go to Cork Simon, and there is the PayPal link. and a Gmail address that is the same as if you want to pay through PayPal and you're on the PayPal side, you can use that Gmail address as well. And also followed up to let John know your address, because sometimes PayPal hasn't been sending it along with the order. So he's going to, he's my co-editor, and we both edited the book, and Margaret Creedon, who is here with us, created the gorgeous cover portrait and the gorgeous cover image. And inside the book we have images. Each poet is introduced with their, let me open a specific one maybe, with their author portrait. This is Catherine Ronan by Max Creedon, and all these author portraits are by Max Creedon. So it's a very colorful edition, and we are going to hold a book launch as well in order to drive sales, and that will be on Thursday, 20th of January. We can get any other day from the library because it's going to go with the library, Cork City Library. They have funded the book, part funded it. So that I will be promoting the Zoom link when it comes, and the event will be on at 6:30 to 8 p.m. Yeah, and during that launch, you can also get that link again if you want to join us then. So I hope you'll catch that event when I pass it around, and I'm looking forward to lots of orders. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Rosalind.